do you know The Matrix,
I do.
guys? I love, it's funny, I'm like, oh, now I know why I've always loved The Matrix growing up.
Right?
Being trans is so much of like, waking up and seeing the binary code and being like, oh, so much so that like even menial quotidian everyday shit, you're sort of like, I'm not a part of that. I don't. I have to code switch or take on another persona or perform in order to fit into this like very everyday thing, like going to work.
Yeah.
When you know that it's a machination because what was imposed on you was a machination. And this is why trans people are like mystics and sages and are spiritual conduits, because they are like outside of the matrix. They see
We see the truth.
binary code shimmering down the screen. Yes.
Yeah.
Trans people are so unbelievable for that.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see in a TV show or a theater
Yes.
piece or a movie. That's what I want to fucking see. And trans representation is absolutely pitiful.
Seriously.
You
Yeah,
know?
and that's why we're creating our own media.
That's why we're doing our own thing. That's why you're hosting these talks to share with people. That's why
Yes, it is. Yeah. I like, the reason I originally started doing this was because I was I was running a group for trans students at my college called Gender Venting.
Literally.
Yeah. And I was like, and I was also like just like engaging with the trans community, and I was like, I was also doing a lot of like designing clothes for trans people, so I was like interacting with so many trans people in so many different ways. Wow. And having these like really honest conversations with trans people about our experiences with gender and like with the world, and like realizing that these things that we are saying are not something that we would feel safe or comfortable saying to a cis person, because like they would have no clue what we're talking about, and like would then start like harassing us and whatnot and like all these things. And like we can just go so much deeper with the conversations with other trans people.
Yeah.
Have you seen that meme that's like
the baby
gender with a cis person? It's a baby. That's my favorite meme.
Togas and like,
yeah, it's great. But I was so I was having these conversations with trans people, and like, this is so honest, this is so real, and cis people are never going to hear these conversations because we are never going to have these conversations in front of cis people. And so the reason I started Trans Talk was to like have these conversations in a safe and comfortable environment, and then share them with the world so that like other trans people can learn from them and like get validation from them. And also cis people can hear these things too, and like hear trans people talking honestly and openly about our experiences, because that doesn't happen usually.
I think it's really important, even though I feel very protective of sort of like the trans community and the culture that we've created. Personally, I know my life would improve if the cis people in my life, stopped kidding themselves. Like even very close, important cis friends of mine have, wielded their transphobia and their cis sexism in unbelievably toxic and harmful ways, and they can't, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason for them to. They operate like in this box, and we operate in these boxes.
Yeah.
And they don't know.
Yeah.
And it's it's unbelievably frustrating to like bring them into your world, especially when you already have, conflict in your relationship dynamics, is so often just going to be really fraught anyway.
Yeah.
And if I could just show things like this to this is people in my life, and if I could show people like this, things like this to people who are questioning in my life, because I'm like, come on, you're trans, baby, you're trans, like, be trans.
Love yourself, know yourself, all these good things.
Yeah.
If I had something like this to like watch and engage with when I was questioning,
oh my god,
it's so helpful for me. Like all I had, God, the media that I was engaging with when I was questioning my gender, was I was watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh my god!
Like for one thing,
totally.
Like RuPaul is transphobic. We know this. Like, and like, God, the fact that like he won't actually allow like trans people on the show when like the history of drag is so trans, like
it's so trans,
makes me so angry. But like, that was the only like gender non-conforming media that I knew about, and so I'm like, I see myself in this, but I'm so confused as to why and how that's possible that I can see myself in this, because like all of these people are like like almost all of these people are like cis men performing femininity, and my experience with gender was something completely different from that, but I'm like, I relate to this somehow. Why? What is this? And it would have just been so valuable for me to get to like hear trans people talk about their experiences.
Exactly. I didn't have anything like I'm like so jealous and angry of like the generations that are coming up now.
Right.
Only because I'm like, fuck you guys, you have like access, and you have elders, and you have internet shit. Like,
that's so beautiful though. I'm so happy for them.
Well, I love that I get to be annoyed by that. That's a beautiful thing in itself. Like, I'm over here being like, and it's like, that's kind of beautiful that you even, all I had was like fucking Skylar Kurgil and like and like Aiden Dowling, like the old fogies, like the old trampas of they're all like 38 only, like they're still young, and like those guys are great, but like that's all I had were like those guys being like 10 weeks on P, blah, 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 which is great, and I just laugh at it because it's such a trope. But
I like it. It makes me really hopeful for the future. And like all of these trans kids right now who are like learning how to love themselves at such a young age, and like be true to themselves and honest about their experiences. Like,
it's amazing.
Makes me so hopeful for the future, because like we as trans people are not going to disappear. We are just going to become more and more and more visible and more like accepted into society.
I agree. It makes me hopeful, and I often think about like my role as sort of a quote unquote elder, even though I'm a young 26-year-old person, and there's so much yet I haven't experienced, but I feel, obviously we in our queer community as a whole, we've had to go through this huge deficit brought onto us by AIDS crisis, and I feel like people like our generation was kind of like the last generation coming up that didn't really have people to look up to, present in our communities, and who could sort of like we could find each other in the underground. But it's also like the underground doesn't even as much need to exist anymore.
Right?
In some places, yes, obviously.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the internet for me, is like we get the privilege and the honor and the beauty of being out and loudly out.
Yes.
And loudly visible and paving our own ways. Because we've had, God, it makes me so sad to think about how much trans people have had to wait or have been told to wait for our turn. And it's our turn right fucking now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
On to our turn right fucking now.
Yeah.